How has your cultural identity shaped your experience as a nurse and leader?
I think it's my superpower. I think who we are as human beings is our superpower as nurses. We are not at the bedside practicing the way the NCLEX tells us to. We're not at the bedside interacting and doing patient education the way that is written on the paper. You have to be understandable, relatable, and truly see the patient for their whole wellness and their whole journey to really be a solid clinician.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the You Belong in Here podcast. This is a podcast where we explore the intersection of nursing and racism, racial disparities that African Americans face in healthcare, as well as the inequities that African American nurses, doctors, and nurse practitioners face in the workplace. My name is Dr. Tiffany C. Brown, and I am your host. I am a doctoral level nurse practitioner with more than 23 years of practice in the nursing profession. It is my hope that through hearing the personal stories of triumph and resiliency shared through in-depth interviews from nurses, nurse practitioners, doctors, and DEI experts, you will be empowered in your workplace and know that you belong in here. Now, let's get to our show. Welcome to another episode of You Belong in Here. Once again, my name is Dr. Tiffany C. Brown, and I am so excited to introduce my guest today for the episode entitled Impact of Black Nurse Leaders in Healthcare. So I am chatting with Mr. Carter Todd for today. He is a master's degree registered nurse with over 7 years of experience having practiced bedside nursing, specializing in critical care, working in the pediatrics ICU, and currently working as an assistant nurse manager of a California-based hospital. He is the founder and president of the Capital City Black Nurses Association, member of the National Black Nurses Association, as well as member of the American Nurses Association. He's bad, okay? He is the recipient of the Diversity and Inclusion Award issued by the Association of Nurse Leaders in Sacramento, Sierra Chapter, and that was in May 2023. He has also received other awards such as 40 Under 40 and Emerging Nurse Leader. He considers himself a nurse leader with passion to improve healthcare delivery through a health equity lens. He personally believes what fuels his journey is to live as a patient and community advocate, continually building relationships and activating the potential of others. So let's give it up for Mr. Carter Todd, everyone. Hey, Carter.
Thank you for the warm introduction, Dr. Brown.
Of course. Thank you for joining me today. Sure. I'm happy to see that you're at work, but tell me how you're doing.
Yeah, I'm good at work. Sorry, it's a little messy here inviting y'all into my safe space, but I do appreciate the time.
Good. Now, our professional connection goes back to the 35th Annual National Black Nurses Association Day on Capitol Hill, and that was Washington, D.C., 2023.
2 years ago, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, now it'll be 2 years ago. We also have a few Black Nurses Association conferences under our belt. I remember when I met you, I recall being impressed by your presence, your professionalism, your confidence, and your charisma. And honestly, it's just been such a journey, such a joy, rather, seeing you continue to grow in this nursing world.
I appreciate that. I think that's the valuable part about nursing associations. I know you called out several in that intro, but, it brings folks together. I mean, you're in the Bay Area and I'm over here in Sacramento, so not too far apart geographically, but it's ironic. We had to fly all the way to D.C. just to meet.
Exactly. Yeah. So now I kind of want to segue and kind of dive a little bit into your personal journey and your experiences so you can share with us. But I think it's important to start with some statistics. So you are an African American male nurse in the nursing profession. So one statistic that was done in 2020 through 2022 showed that the percentage of male nurses, increased from 9.4% to about 11.2%. Yeah. Another study cites that percentage today is about 13%. Now, while this particular study included races of all men regarding African American men, they still remain significantly underrepresented in nursing, so much so that I couldn't even find any percentage for African American male nurses. So let's go ahead and kind of guide us into your journey. Tell us, what your journey into nursing looked like and what inspired you to kind of go down this path.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for the opening question and taking
Yeah.
some time to learn about me. Like many folks, there's a lot of different intersectionalities of who we are as people. My identity as a male and a black male in this women-dominated, white profession is very unique, as you said, statistically. But growing up, I was very fortunate. I had two parents that loved me, cared for me a whole bunch. Neither of them were able to go to college, but they instilled in myself and my siblings, what higher education would potentially give us the access to. So I had two aunts who were nurses, and I seen the life that they had. They were very comfortable. They were very nice and sweet. And I do remember one of them kind of seeing it within me of, hey, you can come do this. You have the right demeanor to become a nurse. Although I had never really understood what a nurse was or who they were. And I'd visit my grandmother as she was going through her disease processes. And I did enjoy the interaction of the nurse at the bedside. But very stereotypical as a male. In high school, I didn't outwardly say, hey, I want to be a nurse when I grow up, right? So I was looking back, there's like newspaper clippings of interviews and whatnot from sports, and they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I would say like a paramedic or a firefighter. But I did start my undergrad journey as a pre-nursing focus, played sports in college, did that for several years, and always had kind of nursing as my end target. But school was not easy for me. I was, like I said, first generation, probably didn't take it as serious as I needed to because I just didn't know. Very transparently, and this is candid for you.
Yes.
I remember the first time I took anatomy and physiology, and the lab that goes with anatomy, I thought it was like non-needed, or I didn't have to go. I went the first time, I said, they're not actually lecturing. I don't need to go to this. So I flunked out very quickly just because I didn't have anyone showing me the way, or I didn't know that way. So bumbled around college for a while, and I do always plug, junior college really kept me engaged. So I've done junior college, I've done state school, I've done universities, I've done online. I've kind of checked all the educational boxes, and I was very fortunate though that the prerequisites I was able to continue doing. Came to Sacramento about 15 years ago, was a graduate of Sac State University, but couldn't get into nursing school because of my GPA. Again, we talk about a holistic approach to nurses. I probably didn't fit that approach. I was bartending, I was having a good time, but I was very caring, and I'm very socially and academically adept. But when you're paying for your own college, when you're living on your own, it's tough to get straight A's and prerequisites. And here in Northern California, as you know, it's extremely competitive. So I do want to give a huge shout out to Sam Merritt University, who saw me as a good applicant for their nursing program with the GPA that I had. And it was off from there. I was very fortunate to get into the program here in Sacramento at the campus here in ABSN, transition that to a new grad program in the PICU, like you stated, spent 5 years there during COVID, cross-trained into adult medicine and, per diem on adult floors. And then finally, when I got into leadership, I found myself now managing nurses on the floor. So I've, a big team now, 10 assistant managers, about 175 staff, several different teams that we lead here. And I've been very fortunate that I've been around some great leaders to help me out around the way.
That's awesome. I mean, like you kind of, you giving this interview with me without me even asking you the question. So I was going to ask next, you kind of already answered to a certain aspect, and certainly you are welcome to add on more. But I was going to ask you, were there any significant challenges outside of the workplace, the GPA, that you faced as a Black male in nursing? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I just think understanding the expectations, right? I think when you're playing a different game that you haven't been exposed to, you just got to know the rules. And for me, I didn't know the rules of the game of how to conduct myself, what the expectation was on the prerequisite side. I think once I got into nursing school, Samuel Merritt did a very good job of this is how you become a professional. This is what a professional nurse is and what you all should be doing. But the prerequisite side, which I think a lot of us in communities of color, right, that's the part that, it filters out a lot of people, as it should. Anatomy, physiology should be hard. It needs to be a struggle to get through. We're taking care of people. It's very serious. But, for us, sometimes we don't have as much ability to jump that extra hurdle or go that extra route, retake that class as somebody else who has, more of a safety net or has kind of that blueprint of the game. So, I remember when I started playing football and I went to the counselor in college and told him I wanted to be a nurse. He kind of chuckled. He's like, "Oh, that doesn't work with our schedule." So he put me in a bunch of other classes, right? It's like I threw away a semester taking classes I didn't need just because I didn't know. So having these conversations with young men, letting them know this is the path. Here's how you can do it efficiently. Here's some of the roadblocks you might hit. Be prepared. I was very fortunate. I had the resilience and the good fortune to be able to pick myself up or keep moving or dodge some of them when they came up. But, life will always be lifing, as they say. So you just have to be prepared to be resilient when it happens.
I love that. Be resilient when it happens. And it's a challenge as a Black nurse, understand the impact or how we need to be resilient in our careers, especially if you didn't get that growing up. And that kind of leads me into the role of mentorship.
Sure.
I know you talked about a few of your role models. One of them may have been your coach, and then you had a lot of seemingly mentors when you went to Samuel Merritt. And they had an influence on your career and your progress. How would you mentor any young male Black nurses or young male doctors or anyone that is Black that is trying to go into a career?
Yeah, so I think that there is a ton of options nowadays with social media, right? And I think the way that we engage in our free time is who we become in our work time, right? So what do we spend digesting? What information are we seeking to understand? Right? Because we can watch YouTube and music videos and, TikTok, but there's actually a lot of value in that. So I think of one social media based group is like the Network of Black Nurse Male Leaders, or
Yes.
that just kind of formed. And it's these powerhouses of Black men in nursing who have been doing it for decades.
Wow.
That are now doing virtual chats and virtual discussions about their journey as Black men. That would have been amazing to have coming up, right? If I can rewind 15 years ago as I was trying to become a nurse. And there is a lot of men who have done incredible things in this profession that now we have access to. There's platforms for folks to hear about, right? A discussion like this. So I think that exposure and taking in the information that we know that we need, there is a little bit of accountability that all of us need on the front end, right? No one's going to hand us anything. No one's going to tell us these are the classes you have to take. Here you go. You're still going to have to work for it. So I would say for those high school students, challenge yourself to be accountable to the practice, to the profession, because it is a very skill that we're taking and that we're learning, right? And there is a little bit of work that we have to put in, but there's a ton of men out there. I know for me, the National Black Nurses Association, MBA, put their arms around me very early in my career, and I've been very fortunate and very thankful to everyone in that organization, from California to Florida to New York to Texas. Just any time we have conference and we have that community, there's so many amazing folks there who are doing the same thing that we're doing here in Sacramento and the 100+ chapters across the country. So finding your network of people early will pay dividends.
Oh my, that is, you dropping some nuggets there.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I want to ask, kind of segue into another question. How has your cultural identity shaped your experience as a nurse and leader?
I think it's my superpower. I think
Ooh.
who we are as human beings is our superpower as nurses. We are not at the bedside practicing the way the NCLEX tells us to, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we're not at the bedside interacting and doing patient education the way that is written on the paper. You have to be understandable, relatable, and truly see the patient for their whole wellness and their whole journey to really be a solid clinician. I think for me and my lived experience as a person is I've been around a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think that's where, DEI is really valuable. It's not about just, how many of X or Z do you have in your organization? No, it's that I can speak to more people, that us as a business can now capture and provide better care to a more broad breadth of our community. And that's what I do. I mean, I used to love when I was in the bedside and, oh, we have this difficult patient. Oh, how it is. They're aggressive or they're this, they're that, any term that gets given on, Black families. And I would go in there and it would be great rapport, right? And you'd understand is, we all have a skill set that we bring in, and you have a hand to that. So how do you play that hand that you're dealt? So I think it's my superpower. I love it. I bring it into every meeting. I think it's part of being a leader is that authentic leadership. There's definitely a way that we all have to agree to communicate and converse and whenever we sign up and work in communities. But also I'm going to bring my own flavor to the table because that's why I'm being picked.
I love it. Bringing your own flavor to the table is a navigational system to addressing the issues of diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace. Boom. You know what I mean? I think it's necessary, and we can bring that flavor to the table.
Yeah,
So,
it's absolutely necessary. And being a man in nursing,
yes,
there is a responsibility that we have because regardless, even if I'm a minority in this profession, I'm still a majority in a paternalistic society, right? So it's navigating that I might be, othered in the profession, but when I go home, I still am very empowered in America right now. So it's an interesting spot to navigate. I think we have to be self-aware as Black men in this profession for the pros and the cons of, the opportunities that it might bring us and then the target that it might put on us as well. And I think that's why having a community, hearing the stories and the journeys like from the network of Black male nurse leaders is super valuable because like I said, you will learn that game from people who have already played it and you can hopefully gain some knowledge from them.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like that's wealth at the table,
right? Man, it's been awesome. I've logged on to several other calls so far, and it's really empowering for myself. And again, I just go back to that 20-year-old Carter and think, man, if he could have listened to this, maybe he could have got into nursing a little bit with a smoother trajectory.
Why would you say, why is representation of Black men in nursing leadership roles important, and how does it impact patient care and team dynamics?
Because there's still health disparities. Yeah. Because Black men still negatively are impacted by the healthcare systems by which we all work. I think whenever there's that question of, why do we need MBA or, why do we need DEI? Well, because our outcomes are not equitable. Our outcomes are not evenly distributed throughout the community.
No, it's not.
So that's why I think it's important, right? So, and we look at who our utilizers of the healthcare system are. 82% of the patients in this hospital today are not women. 75% of them are not white people.
Right.
So what about those other patients? We know the data, it's been talked about for the last 4 or 5 years extensively about how health outcomes and patient care can be elevated when practitioners look, sound, and are from the communities by which they serve. And I think at the leadership table, it's very important because it provides that representation in decision making, policy making, and then I definitely think it sets a tone. I think for myself, when I see it as a person of color, when any organization, not just healthcare, but any organization has a diverse group at the C-suite, I feel like there's going to be a more well-rounded approach to decision making. And I think that's really important. And I think that society now is calling for that, regardless of who it is. We want to make sure everyone's represented, even if it's not my group. Right. I want to see some other group than any homogenous group of people making a decision for everybody.
I couldn't agree more. I would agree with you 100% with regards to the importance and necessity of it. It's necessary. So I want to talk about some challenges, kind of shift just a little bit. Can you discuss any experiences you had with bias or discrimination and how you address them in the leadership role?
Yeah, so I think in leadership, I've been very fortunate. I think as a man in leadership, I do hold a position of power. So I haven't felt it on myself. I think also as I've grown, some of that, I don't feel it as much because my armor is thicker nowadays, but I think about when I was at the bedside in a newer nurse or a nursing school, it was tough. I can think about a meeting I was in. this might be sharing too much, but
No, no,
meeting I was in,
no.
which very routinely I am the only man at a table of all women, right?
Yes.
A meeting we're talking about, it was an ethical patient meeting about if we were going to continue care for a patient. And I misspoke during the meeting. And it's myself and probably 20 women, very high level folks talking about this patient's care. And I misspoke and I said something like 50 miles instead of 50 minutes. I misspoke on how far away the patient lived from the facility. And then someone corrected me. I said, "Oh, sorry, I misspoke." And everyone kind of chuckled. And then the person in the highest ranking in the room said, "Oh, yeah, he misspoke. It's because he's a man." And everyone laughed. And I sat and I said, "Huh, that ain't right. What do you mean because I'm a man?" So I just misspeak, and it was just share. And that was very odd for me because, like I said, in the real world, I'm not subjected to that very frequently. And it just hit me. I said, professionally, this is something I might be having to deal with.
Yeah.
So that was very alerting to me. And then I remember, as many of us do remember, during the murder of George Floyd, the way that the system was interacting with me. I remember getting a phone call from one of my colleagues on the floor. And it was a big unit. We had over 100 nurses. I was at home and I'd already taken a mental health day because, it was a lot, as many of us were going through. I was at home on a mental health day and someone called to tell me, "You don't think all cops are like that, right, Carter? You know that this is all fake and they're just blowing it up. It's not that bad. All cops aren't bad," and gave me that speech. And I hang up and my wife overheard it. And if she could have punched through the phone, she would have. It was like, that is harassment. That is a form of intimidation. And it was just something that really stuck with me in one of those moments that I will never put up with as a person ever again.
Well, amen to that. I would even go add to that was a level of micro invalidation, right? You know what I mean? And insensitivity. I presume that person was not Black. So they should not have been calling on your phone, but that's all right, because here we are. You probably learned from that experience, I imagine, another level of resiliency, even if you didn't have your armor on at home. You know what I mean? To even receive that phone call, very interesting. I want to ask you another question. How can established leaders empower the next generation of minority nurses, whether it's women or men?
So as a leader, to empower others, we have to invest the time.
Sure.
And I think it's difficult. I know that it's challenging throughout my workday to continue to mentor folks. I think for younger nurses coming up or younger people, they don't understand a calendar yet, right? It's like, "Oh, I'm just going to text you or call you real quick." I don't have a real quick. I got a busy calendar, So I think it's definitely easier when someone is already a nurse, already professional, to schedule a meeting and, get on the books. So that's why I would say being a part of those associations, I think for all of us who are, more deeper into our career or higher up in leadership, we kind of use conference or association meetings as that networking space to where I'm here to pour into anyone that's in the room. And that's why I do think it's valuable as students to get involved and be a part of groups, because you're going to get those people there with that dedicated time to give to you versus someone popping into my office at, 2:00 on a Friday when we're holding 45 patients in the emergency department. I just might not be able to give you what you're looking for. And it's tough. I know a lot of men in the profession, we're balancing a whole bunch. And because there's so few Black men in nursing, right, we have to now mentor and coach to everybody. But it's great to see, what was it? Was it Southern University? They had the largest Black male cohort ever of nurses. I think they had 19 Black men that came in. That's amazing. And I automatically go to, okay, who is going to be there to help coach them and give them that road? And that's a lot. That's a lot to put on one academic advisor. Not to say that a woman or a non-Black nurse couldn't be their academic advisor, but again, to find that mentorship, it's important that we create those spaces to do it and to make it valuable.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, and also sharing that information about the 19 African American students that are part of that university, because that's huge.
It was incredible, and the picture was powerful. Things are definitely changing.
Good. Well, what strategies do you utilize for self-care and to build your resiliency?
So athletics continues to be a part of my life. I've gotten into reading. a lot more podcasting or audiobooks. I think, self-care looks a lot of different ways. There's no one way to do it. But for me, being idle is actually a negative for me. Like, I can't just sit on a couch and Netflix. That's just not how I'm built. But I can go for a run and listen to an audiobook about how to be a better leader, the history of nursing. And that really recharges my batteries. For myself, playing with my children, being able to spend time with my family. I just spent, the weekend in San Francisco with our annual Christmas trip with my family. Today's a lot lighter, right? Like it's all good now. So I think that is definitely how I recharge. But I have to be intentional with that, because the higher you climb, the more is asked of you, right? But those self-care kind of things that you have, they have to stay whole. Like, you can't just give up on those. You can't just, I'm just going to sleep a little less to get this done. That won't work forever. I mean, we all pour it on for a deadline here or there on a couple projects, but if your baseline is missing your family, your baseline is not working out anymore, that's not going to be sustainable.
If I could add too, like you said something about, the higher you climb. And, as the higher you climb, whether it's the leadership ladder or the higher you climb, whether it's the educational ladder, I would say that the importance of self-care, it's very important, because the higher you climb, the harder you will fall.
There you go.
You know what I mean? And so that would be painful.
Yeah, and the problems that you're solving are bigger problems, right? Absolutely. They impact more lives. There's a lot more fallout from your decisions. So yeah, it does sit with you differently. And I think, as you're coming through the ranks and you're ascending in any leadership or, climbing any ladder, you begin to appreciate that. Like, wow, okay, now I see why my email wasn't responded to so quickly, because there's a lot going on that you just don't have access to.
Exactly. You're absolutely. So now we're kind of going into the pearls of wisdom segment. And as we know, pearls symbolize some inner wisdom. So I want to ask you, what is one piece of advice you would give to others in the nursing profession, whether it's Black men or Black women, who may be experiencing some challenges of belonging in the workplace or belonging in their school, environment, or fitting in as a Black healthcare leader or professional?
Yeah, I would say if you're having challenges with that in the workplace or school and you feel like you're not fitting in, that's okay. You don't have to fit in. What we have to do is perform for the profession. And if you can be a great clinician, if you can take amazing care of your patients, if you can score well on your test, if you can hit your metrics, whatever it is, that is the real marker. And that's how you fit in, is about how you perform. Now, how it looks can and should be different. I know in nursing school, like, I didn't have a study group because, hey, I'm not going to go over. And, it just wasn't, I was a solo wolf, right? Like, I was just going through nursing school. And then when I worked, I wasn't necessarily fitting into where I was. So I created a community with which I could fit in. Now, I know creating a nursing association and doing all that might not be everyone's cup of tea. So that might be a big ask, but I was still okay with saying, I don't have to fit in over there, because my value is actually producing and helping patients and doing a good job. So why can't I create a community around that to foster that and help out other people? So if you're not fitting in, that's okay. If you're producing and you're making it happen.
That's true. And I would, because the name of this podcast is You Belong in Here, I would say, and add into what you're saying, what I'm hearing is you can create the place that you belong.
They always talk about, bring a seat to the table. Okay, we'll create a new table. That table, if they don't at lunch, okay, y'all don't want me here, but fine, I'm going to go to a better table, So, and professionally that might have to happen, right? So having the courage to move an associate or move an organization, move from a job to a different job, relocate. Like for me, I went from pediatrics to adult. That takes a little bit of courage. And finding my belonging, because I valued my difference, because I valued me standing out, and I knew that was worth it. And having that internal compass, right? I think we cannot let other people set a value on us. We have to set it for ourselves. And this profession will try to do it to you, unfortunately, right? Whenever you're a piece of a profession, they're going to tell you how you should conduct business. But like I said, at the end of the day, patient care, outcomes. If you can do that, no one can touch you.
Oh, you dropped some nuggets today. I love it. Thank you so much. Well, folks, this concludes this episode of You Belong in Here. Thank you again, Carter, for being such an amazing guest and sharing your nursing journey and all these nuggets, these pearls of wisdom with our listeners today. Thank you all for tuning in. We hope that this episode reminds you that you truly belong in your workplace. And if you found this episode encouraging, motivating, inspiring, and or empowering in any way, please subscribe and share it with others. You can find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and you may also go to my website, belongingherepod.com, for guest information and podcast episodes. So stay tuned for our next episode in 2 weeks, where we will continue to explore topics in equity in healthcare and equity in the workplace and belonging. So until next time, take care, and everyone keep pushing forward. Don't stop.